I don't want to do things professionally that I don't enjoy. Part of why a lot of people burn out in life is because they don't love what they do.
Some of us that struggle with that, everything looks urgent. Like
Yeah.
you have 13, 20, 50 tasks. They all look urgent.
Yeah.
And so really trying to say, okay, no, let's pick one thing and let's do that one thing.
This is the Uncommon Success Podcast, where we explore topics about success and dive into the stories of leaders who found success along the way.
And success isn't easy. It takes some grit, a little bit of luck, and a whole lot of patience.
We know that success comes in many shapes and sizes, and we're exploring them all.
So get ready for a journey through the remarkable stories of individuals who have faced challenges head on and learned many lessons along the way.
From business moguls to artists, educators to industry leaders, entrepreneurs to athletes. If it's an uncommon success story, we'll cover it.
The Uncommon Success Podcast. Real stories, real people, real success. Welcome to episode 13 of the Uncommon Success Podcast.
Yes, hello and welcome to our community. Glad that you're tuning in today for a very special episode. It's just me, Andy Coats, your host, and our co-host, Brinly Foxall, in studio today. Just the two of us catching up a little bit. You missed so many episodes. I feel like I got to catch up to where you are in life.
Catch up to everything. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun time. You know, I'm excited about the podcast. We're 13 episodes in, and it's probably best, on episode 13 that we don't have a guest.
Yeah.
No one wants to be the 13th guest of anything. So, but this week, we just had Easter, and so here we are, a week after Easter, and 2024 has been amazing. We finishes up our first quarter of
That's exciting.
podcast.
We
for the
did
year.
more in 2024.
Just like you said at the very beginning, that we were going to do more, and we did it. We've made it to 13 episodes, and that's pretty exciting for us as a podcast to get through now the first quarter of the year, having 13 episodes. It puts us pretty high up there on folks who stuck around making podcasts.
I'm pretty excited about that.
And you've clearly said you're taking credit for
Taking
all
credit
of these.
for all, whether I'm here or not, all 13 episodes.
Regardless, you're responsible for them.
Absolutely. Well, this is episode 13, and today we're talking about something fun that I think everyone experiences in life, and that's trying to spin multiple plates.
Yeah, we thought it'd be a good time just to kind of talk about our stories a little bit, share a little bit what's happening in our lives, and with balancing everything that's happening in our journeys. And because we our guests have got to know us a little bit in the early stages in our first episode, but really we want to talk more about how much we have going on in our life and what's happening. And for those of you who may be a little bit younger, when Brinley says talking about spinning multiple plates, what we mean by that is you have a lot of things going on. If you think, maybe you've been to the circus or the fair where they have those people who they'll start spinning a plate on something and they try to get multiple plates, like dinner plates, spinning at one time. And it gets hard to focus in on keeping all those plates spinning because there's so much going on.
What would be like the cool young people term for spinning plates?
Keeping up with all your social media platforms. To know what everybody's doing on all the platforms at all. Maybe keeping up with influencers.
Keeping up with the deets. That's probably what they say. Like,
see, this is where you're probably way better at coming up with an analogy than I am.
Not.
But yeah, it's having so much going on. How do you keep up with all those things happening? And both of us have a lot of things going on. So we thought it'd be good for just this episode to spend some time talking about how do we balance all that. So I thought let's share a little bit of what's happening in our lives, what all we have going on in our world. So why don't you kick us off and you just share a little bit all the stuff that maybe you have your hands in, the plates that you're spinning on a day in, day out basis. Tell us a little bit what's going on in Brinley's world.
Brinley's world. I'll probably miss some things, but just being a mom is a lot. Mom, wife, daughter, all the things. You want family to be priority. And I'm going to school to get my master's in master's of practical theology. And that's always a plate that's always just spinning, lots of work, and this exciting podcast, which is always very fun. I'm the student pastor at our church, but I also carry some other hats. Like I do our spaces and environments and stuff like that. And that's a lot of fun as well.
Which just being in ministry is a 24-hour, 7 days a week job.
Usually,
you're
yeah.
on call all the time.
Usually you have a couple different hats in ministry. And then I'm just involved in some different ministry outlets. Like one of them that I help out with is Let's Echo. So it's a ministry program teaching women on how to preach and how to speak and developing them, which that's a really fun one that I get to do. So and I started a business.
Yeah.
So then that was our first we've done a couple things on the side, but this is our first real one that we've done the LLC and all the things for. So it's exciting.
Which, again, trying to build a business takes a lot, and running the household takes a lot, and ministry takes a lot on top of all the other little side pieces. The kids going everywhere can be a whole lot. For myself, I feel like I love having plates spinning. Part of even in the discussion of this, what made this be real exciting for me to talk about on this episode, a few weeks ago, my brother came to me and said, your life just makes my wife go crazy. How much you have going on. Anytime you take on something else, she can't handle it. So I love that idea of having that many plates spinning that would drive my sister-in-law crazy. So
that's your goal in life.
Yeah,
Like, what else can I add just to
oh,
drive her crazy?
How many plates can I add just to make her go nuts? But I enjoy having a lot of things going. That's what gives me a lot of energy and keeps me moving forward. But I realized the other day, I say that term a lot, and my wife fusses at me because that could be 2 years ago to 2 days ago. But about a year ago now, I guess.
The other day?
The other day was about a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about all the things I have going, and I wanted to really define it and give some structure to it. That way, all those plates make sense. So, I write books. So I've tried to publish a book every 2 months, and I've done that for the past since I started writing. Every other month, I've put a book out, and that takes a lot of work. Especially I do children's books, so I write them and illustrate them. So it takes.
You draw them?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know you drew.
Do all it's all on computer. I'm not hand drawing them.
Still, drawing on computer is a lot. That might even be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't draw on paper, but drawing on computer is a lot of work.
And it just takes, because I'm trying to make the story come to life, and so I'm doing that. And I just recently started into writing my first children's novel series.
Okay.
And that one, I'm looking to get it traditionally published instead of self-publishing like I've done so far. So just the work of putting in, that many words, it's going to be 50 to 60,000 words
So many
per
words.
book. And it just takes a lot of time trying to develop the whole world. And so and I enjoy that. So I'll spend my evenings doing that. Then my wife and I are big into real estate investing. So we're in the process. We have a house right now we're trying to get sold because we're flipping it, and it's a terrible market right now for flipping a house. And so we made some adjustments to that house. We're in the process of renovating our own house right now. That is been a slow process because it's the last plate to get spun, I guess. And then I just partnered with our technical director here, Stephen Posey, in our apparel business that we have. He's been doing it for 8 years, and we saw how our strengths could come together and do something real special. So now we've partnered together to grow and expand B Lane Printed Apparel. If you've listened to the podcast, you've heard us talk about B Lane as one of the sponsors. And so now partnered with him to do that. And then I do even trying to figure this piece out, but ministry like that. I spent 20 years in ministry. So it's like, what's next for Christy and I in ministry? So all those things going is a lot of plates to keep spinning. Then we have the podcast. That's a big part of my week, and the editing and the production for keeping up with our guests who are going to be coming on and doing our scripts and everything else. So it's a lot of plates. And maybe our guests are listening today and they're thinking, that's a whole lot. But I have a whole lot going on too, between my kids going to basketball and cheer and football and soccer and all that happening.
That's a lot.
I'm trying to, as a parent, I'm trying to also have date nights with my spouse while still trying to, both of us have our jobs. It can be very challenging to balance and maintain all those things in a healthy way. So we thought, let's just spend some time talking about the topic of balance. Now, before we even jump, we have some discussion questions we want to kind of jump into here in a moment. Just curious, do you feel like you're pretty good at balancing life?
Oh my goodness, no.
No?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe I'm better than I think that I am. I think sometimes we're always harder on ourselves than we think we are.
Because we see where we mess things up.
Yeah.
We see where the calendar doesn't happen like we want it to. We know the check boxes that we're going to try to check off for the week. Everyone on the outside doesn't know those things. So,
and maybe I can rephrase that. I think the hardest thing for me is energy balance. Because doing the things, they get done. For the most, school's kind of always that like last thing. I'm like, B's and C's get degrees. It's just school's it's just a lot. But I think energy balance is a lot.
Yeah.
You just, it can be up and down and up and down. All the things are getting done. But it is really hard just to like make sure that the focus is all going where they need to go.
Right.
Being intentional.
You know, one of the things I did a few years back now, I guess, the other day, I dropped. So I'm all but dissertation on my doctorate in business administration, and I took a break back during COVID because I realized, hey, this is a crazy season. Everything I'm doing my research on for my dissertation, I can't do right now because of the COVID. So I took a break from the research, and when it was time to start back up, I was like, I filled that time slot with other things. And like, there's no way I can manage that piece. So school for me was like, it's just got to go, not even on the back burner. It's going to sit on the shelf for a little bit.
Yes. We've had those discussions, but after this semester, I only have 4 classes left. So I'm like,
you're so close.
I think I would regret
Yeah.
not finishing.
Yeah, go ahead and knock it out. And, yeah, for sure. Do you have to do any kind of final project for that, or is it just?
I love how you asked that. 'Cause my husband is also getting his second master's. Somehow he figured out how to turn 1 master's into 2.
Yeah.
I'm like, of course, you have to like show me up, get double masters. He's the one that has like the syllabus out at the beginning of the semester, his books ordered, reading the books ahead for the next semester.
Yeah.
I'm literally ordering my books on the day 1 of class. I'm like, Amazon Prime gets here in 2 days. I'm not opening my syllabus until the week of class. I think there's a project at the end. I haven't asked any questions about it. Like, I have something that's
You'll find out when you get there, huh?
Yes. I have a practicum and a capstone. So I'm doing, figured out my practicum, and I'm doing that now. And then there's a capstone, and I guess that's a project.
The capstone will probably be some kind of project.
Probably.
Yeah, that
Maybe.
you have to do.
Yeah, I'll figure it out the first week of class.
Yeah. You'll figure it out when they say, hey, welcome to the capstone. And you're like, here we go.
Let's go. I'm in. Buckle up.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like when I was a bachelor, I thought I was really good at balancing everything. And I realized when being married that I don't balance things all that well. I do a good job of managing those different plates, but I don't balance them well. Like whatever I'm in, I get a lot of attention to it. And then I go to the next thing, give all my attention to that, and realize I don't do a good job of having all those things functioning really well with or without me. And so that's been an area I've been trying to work on, even, is how do I best keep all those things moving systematically. And my wife, she's been a huge part of me seeing that in myself, because she's a list maker, and she's very efficient at getting things done. And so that's been I thought I did things well, but now I've realized not quite as well as I could. So it's an area of growth that I'm excited to be working on. Yeah. But it makes it, look all these plates and realizing, so what balance, maybe I'm not quite as balanced as I thought. I think most of our audience who are listening probably say, I've got a lot of plates spinning too. So how do we balance those? So I thought let's dive into some discussions, questions, and just talk about this topic. So let's kick off with the first one here that both of us will kind of answer and talk around. How do you define balance in your life, and what areas do you prioritize to maintain it? So how do you define balance, and then what areas do you prioritize to maintain it?
I don't do this well, but I've heard it defined as balance as rhythms. So we're just doing life where it's rhythms. It all goes together. Like, I'm a parent, and I work at church, but sometimes I'm parenting at church. Like sometimes these things are happening all at once, and we're bringing our kids along for the ride. So that's what I'm trying. I'm trying to work on rhythms. I got a kind of a life coach, and she's incredible. And I was like, hey, this is my first season a couple years ago to be in a life where I can't figure out how to balance all the things.
Yeah.
Before moving, my life was just a lot more simpler. There was less things on the plate. Like, I need you to talk to me like I'm 5 and tell me how to do this.
Yeah. Tell me what to do, when to do it, how to do it.
Yeah, like that's just you're not going to talk down to me. Explain this to me. And so we just went through like time blocking.
Yeah.
Like, hey, block this, block that, and just working on these daily rhythms of sometimes it's together, right? Sometimes we're parenting and doing these things, and then sometimes it's like because you need to give your 100% attention to that thing, but you need to give it to all the things at different times. So, she's like, okay, well, what do you need to do on Monday? Okay, from 9 to 10. Okay, let's write this out. 11 to 12. And so she just helped me, and I'm getting there thanks to Jamie. She's amazing.
Yeah, I would think from a definition standpoint, for me, that balance, I love that rhythm piece because there's sometimes it's both and not just and or. I think balance being, I remember that term that I heard growing up that, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's making sure that whatever things need to get done are able to get done. We're talking about the balance of life in the priority that matters most, I guess, in the moment. So I think of it when we got married. I started doing most of the cooking, and we kind of had this. Christy didn't enjoy that piece of it. She's like, "If you'll take care of that, then I'll do the dishes." And so I started cooking and realizing, man, I would have one thing going, and I'd focus on that one thing. And I look up and I've burnt something else because I had both of them sitting on high. And it's like, oh, well, realizing that one can cook slower, and this one needs to cook faster. This one can be happening at this certain time. So if I have all those different things on the stove at the same time, it doesn't mean they all have to have my 100% attention. So the balance being what percentage of my attention has to go to these things in this moment, and then prioritize what has to have the most amount of attention. So, it comes to the second part of that question of what areas do you prioritize to maintain that balance? For me, it's I need to know going into it what matters the most right now.
Yeah.
What has to get done right now. Otherwise, you can just kind of shut down a little bit.
Yeah.
So, for you, how do you prioritize? What's the way that, all the things going in your life, how do you prioritize what gets the attention?
I'm trying to think, what are the things that have to be done today?
Yeah.
What things have to be done? And then when I get space to have deep thinking and there aren't a lot of urgent events coming up or things like that, I like to keep in my mind what's important, not just urgent.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed, especially like in my family or in the church or, it's always, we need this now. And then the things that get back on the back burner are these really, really important things like discipling my kids or discipling students or all these things that aren't an urgent deadline. Yeah. And so I try to balance it between two, but when it's crazy season, it's like, okay, like right now we're in Easter season and that's just busy. Spring, that's busy for everybody, whether you work at a church or school activities, spring break, all the things. So, I just get my little notebook out every day. I'm like, what's got to get done today? Yeah. And I know there's a lot more.
Yeah, sometimes
things to do that.
As you were talking there, I thought about this. In those busy seasons of life, those urgent moments, sometimes everything feels like it's an emergency. Like you walk into a critical moment, you're in the ER, and this has to happen. And it's like, it's great that my toe hurts, but I've got a nail in my head right now. Yeah. And that needs the attention because it's the emergency, it's the urgent thing. But if we're always in a state of emergency, then all those other things will never get done. So I think some of it is how do I shift my life to get it where the things that do matter aren't getting looked over because I live in a state of chaos.
Yeah,
that feels hard. Like that emergency room. And that's where it's difficult. We have to look up and say, okay, if I can't prioritize that where everything gets attention, maybe I've got too many things that I am trying to do.
And that's so good. I've been trying to read Getting Things Done. I'm only in chapter 1, so don't ask me a lot of questions. But
Trying to get that done too.
trying to get the book done. But or maybe I'm chapter 2. I might be better than I think I am. But he talks about having your eyes bigger than what you can handle, like having an appetite. So like me, I'm like, that sounds fun. That sounds fun. That sounds fun. Yeah. And then you get it, and you're like, but how does this logistically work?
Right.
And so I think you're right. Sometimes it is too many things. Sometimes you're less effective because there's too many things going on.
And I think at some point we have to say my attitude makes a difference too. I won't prioritize anything if I have a bad attitude in this. So I've got to have some things that are going to be fun in the mix so that I can have a positive attitude, things that are life-giving to me. Because if everything is just urgent, that's not the fun things to do, but that have to get done, then at the end of the day, we're depleted, and there's nothing that's motivating us into the next day. So, I know a lot of people that, like, for them that's running. For some people it's lifting weights, and they're like, I can't miss that. Yeah. Even if it means I've got to do it at 4 o'clock in the morning. I can't miss that because I need that to give me the energy to get through the rest of it. So prioritizing is, I think, understanding yourself and how do I make sure that I can get through all the things, the urgent stuff, and take care of the things that are kind of on the back burner.
That's so good. So talking about all those things, what strategies do you use to achieve a balance between your personal and professional responsibilities?
Yeah. So, man, that's a really good thought. The personal and professional. I love what I do. I think that's something I tried to look at years ago was I don't want to do things professionally that I don't enjoy. Part of why a lot of people burn out in life is because they don't love what they do. If you love what you, the old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And so I love what I do. The big thing from strategy standpoint is how do I get it all done? And how do I look at the big picture? We flip houses, Christy and I do. And in flipping a house, you got to see the final product. We can walk into a disaster of a house. And looking at the disaster, we can say, well, here's what the finished product. So we always speak to the finished product. We walk in, we're like, we can tear that wall out, countertop goes here. It doesn't matter what's in the disaster. We see the end result. So my strategy, I think, in life is I want to look at what does the final picture look like? What is the end of all this? Because then it helps. You don't see the burnt down kitchen if I'm talking about what the kitchen's going to be. And like, okay, we can tear that wall out, put this countertop here, readjust the plumbing to put the sink over here. And now I'm seeing past the chaos into the potential. That's the strategy I use. And how do I get things done is like, I've got to focus on what this is going to look like, not the mess that it might be in. Because otherwise, it's like, for me, it gets to be too much. If it's just the mess of right now, who wants to just be in a mess? So I love what I do. I think that's the first strategy piece for me. And the second is I look at the final picture. What about for you?
So I think Michelle, one of the previous podcasts, she talks about how her and her family eat real estate. Like that's all that they do. They love it. And I think that sometimes our professional and our personal lives can be intertwined. Yeah. So like for church, that's what my husband and I both work at the same church, and we love working at church, and our kids go to the church. So there's a lot of, that can get complicated, but there's a lot of blurry lines. And I would rather it be that way and walk through that complication so that I get to do life with the people that mean the most to me. Yeah. And so for that, I just try to interweave it, even with the business that I'm starting. I have my son back there like, hey, let's do this together. So how I can bring my personal life into doing things together. But I also am very big about my day off. Like, hey, I need to just shut down over, it's time to rest. Yeah. And one of the things we've been talking about at our church is coming from a place of rest instead of burning out and then resting. So like the Jewish day starts with rest. It starts in the evening. So the first thing that they do for the day is rest. And so I'm trying to shift my mentality to coming from that place of rest, coming from that place of peace versus what I do now. Yeah. Go until I can't. And then I have to like have a day where I'm just like, Yeah, recharging.
You're resting in preparation for the difficult versus resting from a difficult. Yeah, because if you're wore out and then you have to crash to catch up because you're just depleted, that's your body going into shutdown versus I'm resting in preparation for what's about to be hard.
Yeah.
Well, then you're going into it with it's morning time. Let's take this on versus I've got nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
And that's not really rest. That's just
It's just recuperation.
That's
and
just-
that's how
it's
I
shutdown.
operate.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to change my mindset and change my rhythms. And, I'm a little ADD. So I think some of us that struggle with that, everything looks urgent. Like
Yeah.
you have 13, 20, 50 tasks. They all look urgent.
Yeah.
And so really trying to say, okay, no, let's pick one thing and let's do that one thing.
Yeah.
So anyways.
I love that idea of doing things together. My wife and I, we do the real estate stuff together. So we talk about the things together. And especially when we've over the years, as we've flipped houses, we flip those personally. We do the house hacking where we'd move into a house and gut the whole thing, live in it while we're fixing it up, and then turn around and sell it and then rinse and repeat.
I love that because we've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was where we found a lot of time together that if I was just flipping a house somewhere else off-site or whatever and we weren't doing it together, we wouldn't have that time together. Whereas if we're painting together, between us yelling at each other for having to paint, we also have conversation. Yeah. We do adventures together. So we go hiking together. We climb mountains together. Doing that stuff together makes it where I'm not compartmentalizing all my different things. I'm doing it with the people that matter. So I love that strategy. So even for people who may be listening, be like, I don't know where to start. Well, maybe if you're struggling finding the time with a spouse or with your family, bring them in to the world of what you're doing. So I got to find time for my kids and find time to go exercise. How about find a way to take your kids and do exercise together? Because then you're taking two things that are on your list and now they've become one and you're sharing them.
And I think sometimes there's a guilt as parents, like, oh, they're not going to want to do that. But they, like, what else they can do? Watch screens. Like, they need to go learn, experience life, try some new things. So.
Yeah. My brother and I, a few years ago, we took my nephew, his son, we were hiking this big trail in Arkansas from start to finish, and it's over 200 miles long, and we were doing it in sections.
Wow!
And we were like, hey, let's bring our nephew along, your son along with us to do this. And he was young at the time, and when we started this thing 3 years ago, and it was something we started during COVID. And we're like, yeah, well, he ain't got nothing else to do. We'll make him come, and it pushed him, and the first hill that we climbed, he'd probably tell you right now, it was like Mount Everest to him because he got to the top and he was just wore out and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And then it's like, yeah, but you did it. And it pushed him. And, now we do a lot of those we've done Spartan races together and a lot of fun things that now he's a part of. And it goes back to, hey, let's bring in, people we care about, let's bring in and do it together. You mentioned a few seconds ago a little bit on this topic. I want to kind of run with it a little bit here is what people kind of expect. Let's talk about those social expectations when it comes to what all we should be involved in. There's probably a lot of our listeners right now who, as we're talking about the stuff in our lives, they're thinking about all the stuff they have going on. And one, we want to say, if you've taken the time to add this to the list of things that you do every week, we realize how big of a commitment that is. Because our podcasts go for 48 minutes to 75 minutes.
But the best 75 minutes of your
that's
life.
Right. That's right. So even as you've taken the time to prioritize this, we appreciate that. We realize the commitment that takes. But there's a social expectation that a lot of times people think about of what they need to be involved in because everyone else is involved in it. Baseball, football, soccer. So let's talk about those social expectations when it comes to, like, what are some things you think are that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to those that society says you need to have going, need to be involved in? For me, I'll jump in here. One of the first ones I think about is that our kids have to be involved in every activity.
Yeah.
And soccer, when it's soccer season, they're playing soccer. When it's wrestling, they're wrestling. When it's football, they're playing football. When it's cheer, they're cheering. When it's dance, they're dancing.
Which means you have to be involved
yeah,
in everything too.
because then you're helping raise money for it, or you're showing up to all those activities, and so there's just the expectation that has to happen. Any other things that you can think of that maybe be some social expectations?
Man, I think that social expectations can be different for so many people depending on their circle and whatever culture they're in. But I think there's just this feeling of I can't say no.
Yeah.
And if you can say no, I'm so proud of you. But maybe just afraid to miss out. Like, oh man, I'm going to miss this, or I'm not going to make it to that. And it's hard to know like which things to take, which things not to take. I think there's a lot of pressure when people ask and you don't want to.
Yeah, so kind of regardless of what season you're in, there's going to be a social expectation that's out there, and the pressure comes on us on whether we're going to say yes to it or no to it. And the power of no is remarkable in our lives when used appropriately. I think yes is an important answer in situations, but so is no. If we can look at all the busyness, all the chaos, and say that doesn't align with what we're trying to accomplish, so unfortunately we're going to have to say no to that. That's hard to do when everyone around you, maybe in that circle, that's what they're doing. So, I think about this in our own journey that Christy and I are in. A lot of people, they'll invite us to go different things, to be part of, to come hang out, to be in this group, and this group, and this group, be part of this, be part of this. And that can be very overwhelming. And you get to the place where you're like, I want to say yes, but in this season, we're just going to have to say no. And I think when you create a culture of that, I'm not just saying no to everything. We're gonna be very intentional about how we say yes. Then what you do becomes way more effective and way more powerful, I think.
Well, anytime you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Yeah.
So you are going to say no. It's
Correct.
Just a matter whether it's to someone or to yourself or to your kids.
Directly or indirectly. Yeah, because I'm going to say yes to my time for this. I'm saying no to time spent somewhere else. And that goes to hobbies and everything else, I think, too. So when we're trying to balance it, we want to balance the yeses that matter and I think the nos that matter, too.
And also saying yes sometimes when you need a break and it's something fun and energizes you, and it doesn't always have to be like pushing the ball forward. Like sometimes it's just say yes because it's fun. Say yes because maybe it's serving somewhere and giving to something and helps you change your perspective. So I think there's a both and to that. And living through that, I'm going to ask you this, can balance be achieved through flexibility and adaptability, or does it require strict routines and boundaries? We see a lot of routines and boundaries and habits in a lot of business and leadership books. Yeah. And they always make me feel like I am falling so short of the goal. So speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, I struggled with this because I'm a business guy and I'm an adventure guy. And so adventure would tell you, seize the moment, be spontaneous. Don't live in the routine. Get outside of the routine. Go on an adventure. Chase the thrill. That's the adventure side of me. But then the business side of me says routine, strategy, stick with it. You do something the same way long enough, it will produce. So there, you see that side of it, and then you can get real rigid. And I think, in a different scenario, this illustration that I have, I'm about to share is used, but I heard a pastor once talk about this topic about a road. And on both sides of that road, it's easy to get into the ditches. And so it's easy for me to get real legalistic on, I'm going to be rigid and strict on have my routine. I'm not going to waver from it. And then you get in the other ditch that's like, no, spontaneous, we'll do whatever, always open, super flexible. And both of those can put you in the ditch. And in the ditch, you don't go very far. Yeah. So finding the balance of, okay, how am I going to have routine in my life that also allows me to be spontaneous too? I think that's the most accurate way to do it. But I struggle with wanting to break routine. I'm a rule breaker by heart, just by nature. I want to oppose things. I want to break the rules. I want to get outside the lines.
It's your classic entrepreneur.
Yes. But in doing that, you can also it's like there's some tried and true things that you miss out on because, so I struggle leaning toward that. I want to be adventurous and, we don't need a schedule. We don't need, let's just live by the moment. And well, that doesn't accomplish a whole lot of things. You can have a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
But doesn't get all, where do you lean on that? Are you more routine? Or are you more, let's go with the moment?
Well, I like how you said you try to have routine so that you can have spontaneity and flexibility. Yeah. I did the strengths finder test, and you give her 50 strengths, and I went ahead and got the whole 50, and my bottom one was consistency. That's like the thing I'm worst at, basically, is what it is. And so I'm terrible at routine and habits, and one thing I've had to accept is it's okay if my prayer life looks different than someone else's.
Yeah.
It's okay if what works for me doesn't look like someone that has, type A. They look all together. They got their planners out and all the things. Like, it's okay if I look different. But also, if I want to have that fun spontaneity, I do have to have some routines and some rhythms, and I need to work on that muscle. And so, and I've worked at it, and I've come a long ways at trying to make a list and block out my calendar and block out times, because when I do that well, then the things that I'm stronger at, more natural, I have freedom to do that versus getting overwhelmed, shutting down, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I remember telling some friends one time, we were talking about planning for spontaneity. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend of mine, he's very spontaneous. He doesn't like anything routine. He's like, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't plan for spontaneity. It goes against the whole definition of the word. And what I told him was, I said, here's the thing. I'm really good at being spontaneous. I'm really good at finding something fun and adventurous to do. I don't have to plan for that. If I want to just go have a good time on a Saturday morning, then what I'm going to do is let's block out Saturday morning and say, we're doing something fun. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Yeah. We're going to do something fun. Or we're going to go do something and we'll make that something fun. But I'm in the routine of that. I don't have to figure out. Now, if I plan what Saturday morning is going to be, that could take away the spontaneity of it. But if it's like, I'm just going to time block that in to prepare for it, and then we'll let the moment happen and be what it is. So now I have both. I have the routine, and I have the spontaneousness that helps me out, because my wife is very much like, she needs things to be planned out. She's gotten really good on our adventures that we go on, any kind of trip we take that's going to go climb a mountain. Part of it, I think, because if she knows too much, then she'll start freaking herself out about it. She didn't want to know. But a lot of it is, she's like, you know what? I just need to know when. Tell me when. Tell me what the temperature is going to be like, and tell me what I need to wear. She wants to be prepared, but she'll just say whatever it's going to be. But there's still a preparation phase. Yeah. That if you're going to have the maximum amount of fun in your spontaneity, it could be a whole lot better if you prepared a little bit.
What restaurants are around, and stuff like that. And one of my friends, she was saying how she was trying to get in rhythm. She has the same thing, like it's Monday this, Tuesday that. They make the same thing for their family. And I was like, that is so boring. Yeah. Who would want to eat the same thing every Monday? Like, I just want to figure it out. Yeah. Or change it up, or plan it each week, or whatever. And the more that, as I gotten busier, as my kids have gotten older, the more things I've got on my plate, I realized, man, there's real decision fatigue in deciding all of these last minute things. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to decide them. Might be last minute, but why don't I go ahead and create systems and automations so that I don't have to waste all my brain energy? Yeah. Because you only have the capacity to make so many decisions in a day. Yep. So the more that we can automate and just put on that automation mode and not have to think about it. So
that's when they talk about billionaires, most billionaires, they have very plain wardrobes. And usually there's like a Monday outfit, Tuesday outfit, Wednesday.
I can't go there. I can't go there.
Super plain. They never pick anything out. It's just laid out for them. They put it on and go, because it's a decision.
But they could literally hire someone to make their wardrobe not so basic.
But even before they do that, they're like, I just want no decisions to have to be made, or let me cut out the small things that I spend way too much time thinking about. I'm the kind of person, when it comes to what I want to eat for the day, at lunchtime, it's whatever I'm feeling.
That's me.
Whatever I'm feeling, whatever's around, that's what we're going to do. My brother, who listens to this podcast, and I don't know if he listens to this or not, because I'm going to tell you the difference in my brother and I. My brother, he went almost, I think it was a whole year where all he ate for like lunch and dinner was Chipotle. And he got the same thing, to the point where
I mean, good taste.
he was in the top 1% of their customers. I think less than 1%, like in the 0.05. He was like a top customer nationwide for them.
Did they give you something for that?
I don't think he got anything for it, but like them knowing who he was when he came in. But like he every day, and he ordered like the same thing. It wasn't like it was a different thing from Chipotle every time. He's pretty much getting the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But it's a decision you don't have to think about.
That's like what Craig Rochelle, he's like, I eat this number of blueberries.
Yeah.
I think it was like 8. I'm like, it's so sad.
Yeah, and there's a handful. Well, I don't know how many's in there, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
If I want blueberries. But I think we get to the point where it's like, okay, I got to make some decisions. Things have to get done. If we're spinning all these plates, let's not add unnecessary decisions to the plate to do it with. So what about when it comes to like calendaring? If for you, is it, we're talking about balance.
Yeah.
Calendar wise, how do you function with a calendar? Like, do you and your husband, y'all share a shared calendar? What does that look like for you guys?
So we have a shared calendar. We have a church calendar. So most of my calendaring is digital, and for appointments or meetings, I have like 5 notifications, so I won't forget it, because there's nothing worse than forgetting an appointment or a meeting or something, because life throws curveballs, and not every week's the same. So I have a ton of automations, tons of reminders, and then I've done a little bit of a 180, because one of the girls I work with, she does a paper planner, and I've been totally making fun of everybody with a paper planner for like 5 years. There was one lady at my last job that had a paper planner. We'd all have our computers out, and we're like, that's lame. But I've noticed that that's what I already did anyways. If you would go into my office, you would see like 15 Post-it notes.
You would take it from your digital source and put it on a piece of paper
and
on your wall.
It was just Post-it notes everywhere, and I would run out of Post-it notes, and I'd have to like go through stacks to find the Post-it note from the last one. It was just chaos of Post-it notes.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? That's what I already do. So obviously there's something to putting pen to paper, and I have recently gone back to a paper planner.
Eating her words.
Yes, eating my words.
I don't want you to drop the name of that person, because we don't want to throw them under the bus or nothing, but I bet for them it'd be so satisfying if they're listening to this thinking, you're making fun of me with my paper calendar.
Oh, she would have so much fun with that, because we'd always be like, yeah, you with the paper calendar.
I think this week you ought to text her and say, I went to paper calendar. Sorry for everything I ever did making fun of you.
No, I'm not going to give her that satisfaction. No, but I do like the monthly and all that digitally, just because paper's not going to remind me.
Right.
But, I'll go plan my week out on a paper calendar, my to-do list on a paper list and all that. So what about you?
I like both. So for some reason, when it comes to, I'm a very visual person, but when it comes to calendaring on my phone, I can't visualize the calendar off of a digital thing. On paper, I can see it. So usually I put it in my phone, but then like for the week, I have to like see it.
Yeah.
Now, so I write it. I have a notebook, and I'll write it down in a notebook, and I never have to even go back to that notebook. But just by writing it out off of my phone onto a piece of paper, I can see it all, and it locks in for me.
Kind of locks it in, yeah.
I've been very fortunate in life that I have a pretty good memory. So once things get locked in, like I can keep track of all the things I have going on, and that's been very beneficial for me. But the older I get, the more those things start to just slip. You know?
That's how I've always been. Like, I know, like, what pile that shirt is under, or that Post-it note is under. But I'm getting older, and I'm like, I can't do it like I used to do.
Yeah, now I'm like, Christy, where'd I put my keys? Because it's,
so bad.
Like all those, the older I get, the more that those things don't quite just fire like they used to.
And maybe it's not older. It's just the more things you have on your plate, because your brain is like RAM, right? You can only store so much short-term memory.
But I'm also running a 1983 computer that's up here, and the updates don't work so well for it.
I do an Expo yearly calendar.
Yeah.
Like, that helps me so much. It's like I just have a huge 38 by 4 or whatever.
Yeah,
big calendar.
Big calendar.
With all the things.
To know what's happening.
Because I'm visual too. Like, I've got to see something.
Yeah, that's very helpful. One of the things Christy and I have been talking about, we want to start doing the calendaring together, just so we can see. Because what I would do is I'll say, hey, here's the next month of things, or 2 months, or 3 months of things, or here's the year's worth of races or whatever I'm going to be doing, and I'll send those to her, and she puts them in her calendar, and then that weekend will get there, and I may cancel that race, or my brother and I decide to do something else instead of that one or whatever. And she's like, hey, aren't you going to be in Arkansas this weekend? It's like, no, we're not. We're doing something down in, Texas or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't update that, so we talk about doing like a shared calendar just to help us with, knowing what's happening in our separate worlds. But for me, like being able to see it helps. And one of the things that we found is a helpful tip just for maybe our listeners, if you don't leverage this, it may help if you're a visual person. We love using our bathroom mirror as a communication device. So whether it's
That's funny.
something we're praying about, or something that's on the schedule, or put it on the mirror, because she definitely looks at herself before she walks out. Most of the time I'm going to check in a mirror before I walk out too, but it's been a helpful little device for us.
That's so good. And as you're planning and as you're calendaring, if that's even a word, I don't know. We may have just made it up.
Yeah.
How do you recognize when you're out of balance? And if you are, what do you do to realign yourself back in?
Yeah, so I think where I find myself being out of balance is where I start to just shut down on like wanting to do it, or if I'm trying to avoid it, then I feel like I'm out of balance somewhere. So that's where a few years back, what I realized about myself was I was a little bit out of balance. That I had so many things, so many dreams, so many plans that like some of the things I was just avoiding even trying to plan for them, or get that plate spinning again. And so it's like, yeah, I'm out of balance here because I'm not passionate about it, or I'm trying to avoid it. So in those moments, like at first, I think it's a reassessment. It's like, okay, is this a priority? Do I need to be spinning this plate? Is this something I need to just lay down? There are some things that we just continue doing because we started them. And it's like, I started this. I used to be bad about this with movies. I'd start a movie and I'd have to finish it, no matter how stupid the movie was. Or I'd start a TV series, and then they decided to go 10 seasons with that thing. But because I committed to it, I've got to finish this thing out. And now the more I'm into it, it's like, no, I'm not enjoying that. It doesn't make sense. So there's no point finishing it.
Life is short.
Yeah. And we do that not just with movies and TV shows, but also with like things that are happening in life. It's like, I used to spend a whole lot of time trying to ride mountain bikes. And I really enjoy riding a mountain bike. But now I just go when the friends are like, hey, you want to ride bikes? And then I'll go. But I'm not going to go just train to ride a mountain, because it's not something that's just a top priority for me. So what about for you? Like, how do you recognize when you feel
I
like
think
you're out
this
of
is
balance?
something I'm still really working with, is balance and how to realign myself. But when I notice that I'm in like shutdown mode, when I'm cranky with the people around me, things like that, when I've lost passion for it. And I think sometimes we focus too much on emotion. Sometimes you're not always going to be passionate about what's in front of you.
Yeah.
You're not always going to be excited about what's in front of you. Sometimes it's just a decision because you've made a commitment. But, we do have to reassess, and sometimes it's not worth it anymore. But, I think for me it's just praying and trying to get back. Sometimes it's not so much of slowing down, it's figuring out what stressors are there.
Yeah.
Because when you are in maybe it's not a toxic situation, but when you're in a hard season, you go on vacation and you come back and all of that stuff's still there.
Yeah.
So they talk about burnout. Like, you can switch jobs, you can go on vacation, but you're going to come back to your old habits and your old things. So it's really just stopping and assessing, okay, what am I allowing myself to do that's causing this out of balance, that's causing this burnout? Because sometimes just going somewhere new doesn't fix it, because you haven't fixed you.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm really working on, is asking myself, what habits and decisions am I making that causes myself to get out of balance? But
Is your big indicator, like, is it attitude for you usually? Like when you feel like you're just out of balance in life, do you get like a bad attitude, or do you get do you want to pull away from people, and like what's kind of the big, Like for me,
I don't know there's a lot of external things
Yeah.
happening. It's probably just more internal. Like I just feel it. Like I know like, hey, I'm getting tired. This isn't.
I know I'm out of
Yeah.
sync and out of balance when I get real short with my wife. Because I can put it on in the public. You know, I step out with people and I can put it on. But at home, like when I'm real short, real cranky, she does something and I'll just like, you know, get a bad attitude about it. And it's like, what do you do? You know, like that's when I know, okay, something is out of balance here because everything I'm being short about
Yeah.
with her, the person I care about the most, gets like. So when that's happening, I know something's out of balance. I gotta figure out where the tension is here.
Yeah.
And try to hopefully solve it before she has to solve it for me.
I
You
know.
know?
Yeah. I think more probably isolating,
Yeah.
just needing to be alone more or veg on TV more, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that would be me.
What just kind of as a final question here that we want to talk through, what should someone do when they feel overwhelmed or feel like they have entered into that shutdown mode? Let's just offer some, just from our own world, what are some things maybe that you found to be helpful for you, or just some counsel and advice, or just some thought to what should someone do if they feel that overwhelmed or like just in shutdown?
What's the thing that makes you feel so overwhelmed? So for me, if my house is messy, which I'm not a great housekeeper, but that chaos feeds into everything else. And I've noticed that if I would, even though there's urgent things going on, if I would just stop and get like my life looking in order, it makes my mentality feel so much better. So I think that there's probably something that's weighing on you that's making you feel like a failure or making you feel like chaos. So what's that really big thing that if you could, even if it's not urgent, if you could clarify or clear or declutter,
Bring order to.
that you could start moving out of that chaos. So I think, and I've noticed that about me, like if everything is chaos around me, it's really hard for me to figure out what's the first step in getting out.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I love that. So that's something that I realized in my marriage that, you know, Christy, because we always work in construction zone, you know, because we're always renovating something, I just leave things everywhere. So like when I start into this project, and I have 12 projects going at one time, and all those tools stay out because I'm leaving them there so I know where they are when I get back to that project. And for her, that looks like just multiple things of chaos. And so I had to realize in my own world that, hey, sometimes you just need to clean this up, keep this tidy. That way everything doesn't feel like chaos. A little bit of chaos I'm okay with, but a lot of chaos just makes it feel very overwhelming. I love that piece you just said of like, man, just what's one thing I can do? For me, I think when I think of like just a tip when you feel like overwhelmed or shut down, I think stepping back and saying, what's the biggest like the biggest thing right now that feels the most overwhelming? What's the thing that's happening that's making me want to shut down? Don't worry about all the plates that are spinning, because it's easy to blame the masses. You know, if I've got 12 plates spinning of things I'm doing and I feel chaotic, if I'm trying to think about, okay, how do I solve this? Well, all of it, you can't solve all of it. So what's the biggest trigger? What's the thing that is most, like for me, that's why I stopped doing the school, because I knew I had this big project to do, and I plan to get back to it at some point, and I'll get back to it. But it was the biggest thing that was creating the most amount of chaos and frustration and making me want to just shut down and everything, because it's like I've got to get this piece done and this piece and go to this research and turn this into, and I got a conference call with this professor, all while the rest of life is happening. I was like, I need that to calm down a little bit. And so when I took the break from that, I felt the calm. Yeah. Because it was the most overwhelming. But I had to look at, and I got that counsel from someone else that was like, hey, what's the biggest thing? What's causing the most amount of stress? So I think when you feel overwhelmed and like you want to shut down, find the biggest thing. And for some people, maybe that's a relationship. You know, if it's a spouse and it's like that's causing the most amount, well, that's what you need to work on. Because if you get the big thing figured out and solved, and start working on that, then the other things probably find order to them. Because what's causing the chaos, if this one thing gets chaotic, you know, I love watching Survivor. It's big. I've been a fan since day one of that show. And there's a game they do where you drop a ball into this machine and it starts rolling down, and then you drop another one in, and they split off and go different directions. You have to watch and catch a ball on the left side and the right side, and you keep adding a ball, and you have to keep track of what's left, right, and you watch these people like they know it. They feel like they're in a rhythm, and they forget what side it's going to come out on. And it only takes like one little mess up, and all of a sudden that ball shoots out the wrong side, or they scramble. And once you get behind, then the whole thing just seems like chaos. And I think that's true of life. That once one thing, when I get out of rhythm of something, one little thing can throw the whole thing into a wacky situation. So if I can just get the big thing, find out the big problem, work on that. And it may be something I need to set aside. Maybe something I need to work on. Maybe something I need to get counseling on. Maybe something I need to get a mentor on. Whatever. Work on the big problem. And I think that'll be a helpful thing to start with.
I think sometimes we underestimate the weight of emotional problems too.
Yeah.
Like if there's something, a relationship or something going on at work or something with your kids that's heavy, everything else seems bigger. So it's a lot harder to spin a lot of plates when you're consumed and feeling heavy with something that needs to be either dealt with or let go.
Yeah. Yeah, if that one plate is causing you a bunch of turmoil, then all those other things feel like they're just weighing you down and not doing the thing. And really, it's just that one. It could be just that one problem, and if you can work on that. And it may be something internal, even in yourself, that maybe I just need to forgive that person.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just need to realize, hey, we all have faults, and step back from that a little bit. And you may see that a lot of that chaos start to back off a little bit. But I think this is a great conversation just about some balance in our own lives, realizing we haven't figured this out. We're both still trying to figure out how to best balance all of our own spinning plates. And my wife's going to be listening to this podcast, and she's going to be like, see, now we're gonna put some order to some of this chaos that's happening in our lives. But not saying we have it figured out, but I think if we can we're all on this journey together. I think finding people who we can learn from, grow from, take counsel from, advice from, and grow in our own self in our journey toward uncommon success. Let's take the tips and the suggestions. I've learned a lot in the past quarter, this first quarter of the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's been such a great having these guests on, sharing their stories. And I want to encourage you, maybe if you're listening to the podcast, just hearing someone's story is very powerful. As you've seen just through our guest, it's very powerful to hear stories. And so begin to ask people their story. Take them to coffee. Take them to lunch. Ask them to share their story, because it's in our stories that we find the real parts of the success journey. It's not just on what you see in the surface. So hopefully this quarter has been a very encouraging thing to you as well. Maybe you're listening to this and we're a few years into the podcast and you're just catching this episode. Go back and listen to those first ones, because they're very powerful, inspiring stories. But this was a fun day. Enjoyed this.
Yeah.
So, wonderful episode.
It was super fun. It was great.
So, hey, we're gonna do something here as we wrap up this episode. In just a moment, we're gonna have our technical director, Stephen Posey, who's been helping us through all this first quarter behind the scenes. We're gonna ask him to join us for our Patreon discussion.
The real MVP.
That's right. We're gonna bring him on and have a little discussion behind the scenes for our Inner Circle Cool Kids Club, and you can be part of that Patreon conversation where we have that VIP discussion. The exclusive content just for those Patreon members. You can $7 a month. Go to patreon.com/the Uncommon Success Podcast, and you can subscribe to our Patreon there.
Also, you can follow us on all of our platforms. You can listen on Apple and Spotify, and you can listen or watch on YouTube. So if you're just hanging out at home and you want to watch a great show, here we are.
Yeah.
You can also join us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I encourage you to like, share, subscribe, and review. And please comment, ask questions, talk about something that stuck out with you. We love, love, love to hear from all of you.
Yeah, maybe where your life has been, you found some strength in balancing. Let's share those recommendations out to our community, because we can grow and learn from each other. And thanks for joining us today. I encourage you to join us next week for a very special episode discussing the topic of entrepreneurship as we launch into our second quarter of the podcast. So it's going to be fun. In this next quarter, we're going to be talking about just some insights from different industry leaders. So we have a lot of great guests lined up from different industries, and we're going to hear their stories, but also insights in those areas. Even if it's an industry you're not involved in, it'll be fun discussion to hear just some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that happens in different areas. We have some fun guests lined up, and we're excited. So next week, we'll be jumping into the topic about entrepreneurship.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a fun episode. Well, that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. We're so happy to have all of our listeners join us.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great week, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Uncommon Success Podcast, where your commitment to growth fuels our passion to create more content. Special thanks to our executive producer, Jess Camp, and our technical director, Stephen Posey. We're excited about our episode next week and hope you would tune in to join us as we work together to continue our journey towards success. See you next time. Have a great week.